Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 24 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Wednesday evening. We are pleased to be joined by the Athletics Philadelphia Phillies beat writer Matt Gelb. Matt, how are you? And how is quarantine? How are you holding up during this quarantine?
Doing well. Excited finally that there's some actual baseball to write about, even though we have no idea if it's going to happen or not. But it's something different to take us away from kind of the realities of this world right now. But quarantine's been good. My wife and I had a baby girl on April 15th, so we feel like we've just been, we would have had a quarantined life essentially in a normal world. So it's been fun, like the unexpected time at home. Usually I'd be traveling and at the ballpark a lot this time of year, but I've gotten some extra time at home, and that's been really great. And I've spent with my family, so that's been the positive. Trying to look at the positive at all, but it's been a challenge. It's just we're lucky. There's so many people who aren't lucky, but definitely been a challenge.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And again, for those that did not hear Matt, there is a little bit of sound discrepancy on your end. But I think we just to, again, for just a tiny bit, couldn't hear you there, but I know I heard you. But for those that did not hear, Matt had a baby girl back in April. So congratulations again. And again, as we did say just off air, happy belated Father's Day. And I hope that your wife does not get used to Father's Day, because, normally at this time, Matt, this is the time that you're on the road. But, I guess she got spoiled now where, during these trying times, she's able to have her husband for the whole day, which is great. But really great to hear. And obviously, again, for those that do not know, obviously there's a lot of unrest in the world, but there are some positives that came back yesterday at 5 p.m. Well, guess what, folks? Baseball is back, and that means Matt Gelb will be back on the beat. He's been there doing that, came out with a couple articles just a couple of days ago with Mark Carrig, and we'll get to that in just a few moments. But let's start with who you are, Matt. And for those that are just joining us for the first time, this podcast is a byproduct of our flagship podcast, the Primetime Rundown, as you can see right here. And also what this is also is that we get to know who Matt Gelb is, along with all of our guests outside of what is written in 3 sentences on a website that may say that Matt is a Syracuse grad or etc. What else is Matt all about? And that's what we're going to find out. That's what we're going to find out about today. So Matt, let's get the ball rolling. So as I pulled off a little spoiler alert there, you are a Syracuse grad, Newhouse graduate. Talk about your time at Syracuse, class of 2009. You're a Pennsylvania native, Central Bucks High School. You became a writer immediately after your time at Syracuse. This is, obviously Syracuse is a big broadcasting school, but you stayed in the media industry and went towards the writing side of things. Give us a little bit of background there.
Let me come back and join.
Matt, can we hear you there?
I can hear you now. There you are. Sorry about
that. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, I don't know if think we had a little cutout there. So as I was saying, for those that were or could hear, Syracuse grad, obviously, class of 2009. You graduated newspaper online journalism, and you also were a double major in history as well. You grew up in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, Central Bucks High School West. Great area. This is obviously pre-Phillies era. You were born, and then you eventually get your academics and your bachelor's degree at Syracuse. Talk a little bit about your time in upstate New York and how writing became your occupation now.
No, I mean, my time at Syracuse really, pointed me in the direction that I wanted to go with sports writing. And that was mainly because of my experiences at the Daily Orange, which is the student newspaper at Syracuse, and it's totally independent of the school. And it's a great place. I mean, I have a lot of fond memories there. I've made friends for life who I worked with at the DO, and had a lot of mentors. And I think that was the great thing about Syracuse is that there's so many great people who have come through there. And the school is known as a journalism hotbed, but I found my experiences outside of class to be more rewarding than actual class, and that's why I try to tell prospective journalists or people who are interested in sports journalism specifically is that a lot of times like you have to experience it, you have to do it, and you can try to learn it in class, and you can have great professors, but I feel like the real life experience that I got at a place like the Daily Orange, which operated as if it was a legitimate, real like grown-up newspaper, and it is an awesome media outlet, and it just happens to be student run, but that was the best experience. I made connections there, and did a couple internships in my summers while I was at college, and I've always loved baseball as my favorite sport. It's my dad's favorite sport, so he made sure it was my favorite sport, and I'm lucky. I mean, I have an amazing job, and everyone, it is fun. I mean, it's still at times it's work, and I'm working at night and weekends, when people aren't working. So that's definitely a challenge. But I get to write about baseball. I mean, it's awesome, and Syracuse really pointed me in that direction, and a lot of the connections I made there, helped me get kind of in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but also obviously your love for baseball goes beyond Syracuse, because I see also just in your just to your 7 o'clock there, just behind you, you have a pair of original Yankee Stadium seats, which is obviously a huge memento, because I'm assuming you're a diehard Yankees fan. Let's say that I would assume, or you are a Yankees fan.
Those are actually veteran stadiums. Whoopsie.
They are veteran. Are they really?
Yeah. So
wow.
that's my dad. When they were going to blow up the vet, sort of been after the 2003 season.
Yeah.
They were selling the seats. A pair of the seats for I think like $150 or something, and my dad got 2 pairs, and one of them is at my parents' house, and the other one he said, whenever you can take them once you get your own, the second set you can take them once you get your own house, and so I've got a pair of vet stadium seats here in my house now, and I remember my dad, they would have you pull down the service ramp, and they just loaded the seats in the back of the van, and that was it. That was they had plenty of them to sell, so they're pretty cool.
That's great. Yeah, it's actually sad to say that I didn't even recognize, because those seats, here obviously in the New York area, they looked identical to Yankee Stadium seats. But again, for those Phillies fans that are watching, I do apologize for my Yankee fandom. But we are speaking with a Phillies beat writer, so really, really good stuff there. So continuing on track here. Now, your time, Matt, as a journalist, goes again all the way back, and did you always want to be a writer, going all the way back to Central Bucks High School? Were you a part of writing clubs there, or sports clubs there, where you'd be able to write for the respective sports teams?
Yeah, actually, I wrote for the paper, the student paper in high school, and I played baseball, I played hockey. I wasn't very good, and just like any most sports writers, their athletic career ended prematurely, and I never thought I was any good at sports. But I loved sports. I loved following them, and I also love to write, and I've been able to combine those 2 passions. And even in high school, like I actually worked, answered phones for one of the small papers in Montgomery County, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And, I loved it. I mean, I loved everything about it. And it's not always the most glamorous profession, as I've come to learn, but, it kind of beats having a real job. I mean, I think it's a lot of fun, but those are my 2 passions. Like even when I was in high school, writing and sports, but specifically baseball. And I got lucky. There's no other way to put it. And a lot of people ask me for advice about how to break in the industry, and like it really is like the right place, the right time, and I mean, it can be a brutal industry as we've seen now the last few months. I mean, there's a lot of cutbacks, and there haven't been sports, so it's a tough time to be in sports journalism. But I wouldn't trade it. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, especially now. Now is the time that you really have to. You really have to have the faith that you're going to get your job back if you were furloughed, if you were laid off, but also, yeah, if you're an aspiring broadcaster, journalist, and I know, Matt, you could probably attest to this as well. But if you really want it, you're going to go get it, because now again is the time where there's not many places that are hiring. Everyone's looking to cut back. So, almost you have to really buckle up and make sure that that you're not going to get ejected from that seat, because the pink slip could be coming with anybody now, and it's really, it stinks. But you said it again. I can attest to that, especially with breaking in the industry. It's so difficult, and you can also. I think you can attest to this also, but it's not a job when you love what you do, but when you wake up extremely happy. Talk about that. What do you think? As a sports journalist, you wake up every day and you say to yourself, "Wow, I'm a sports journalist." This is not many people can say that, when they're going off to their 9-to-5 blue collar jobs.
Yeah, so I tried to get a little perspective on this because I covered the Phillies for 5 seasons for the Philadelphia Inquirer from 2010 to 2014. So those 5 seasons, and I was pretty burned out. I was, doing the daily beat for 5 straight seasons is a lot, especially with a bunch of different deadlines every night at the newspaper. And a couple of those Phillies teams there, 13 and 14, were pretty brutal to watch. They were teams that were supposed to win and they didn't win, and it was they were tough teams to cover. They were older teams, and there was a lot of bad feelings around those teams, and people were pretty angry in that clubhouse. And I was just burned out, and I really wanted to see what else there was. I mean, I only knew baseball as much as I loved it, but I was definitely burned out. And I did a year on the city desk at the Inquirer, and I covered everything. I was a general assignment reporter. I covered cops, courts. I did features about people in the city. I got to see a lot of different things that I'd never seen, but it was also the first time since graduating college that I had, a quote unquote like 9 to 5ish job. I mean, I went into the newsroom in the morning. I left the newsroom at a certain time, usually each day. And this is what I equated. Like when I'm at the ballpark, I'm never looking at the clock, being like, oh, I only got 15 more minutes and I can clock out, or I only got two more hours and I can clock out. I can go home. I never do that at the ballpark, and certainly there are nights where you're like, oh my god, I want to get out of here. It's like a long game, or there's a 2-hour rain delay. And you're just like, oh, this is brutal. But when I was on the city desk, I mean, I would look at the clock and I'd be like, oh, 2 more hours, and like that, that's a feeling I don't have. And so like everyone does say that the grass isn't always greener, and I'm glad I got to experience what I did. I mean, I think it made me a better journalist, a better writer. I think it gave me perspective, on what's important and what's not important. But I was back on baseball in 2016, and then moved to the Athletic for the start of the 2018 season. So this will be my 11th full season covering baseball. Though it's not really a full season, but this will be my 11th full season covering baseball, covering the Phillies. And yeah, I mean, I think that perspective was important, though. I think walking away from it for a year, I don't take it for granted now. I think it's easy to take things for granted in life, and I think during this whole crisis, I think a lot of us have had to reassess like what's important in our lives, and you learn to really appreciate the things that you love, that are consistent, that give you joy, and certainly my job is one of those things.
Yeah, especially because, it could just go away like that, and you had brought up your time at the Inquirer. You had gone from covering, you were obviously a sports journalist there. You were covering the Phillies for the Inquirer as well, but then you moved to the city desk as well. Now, when you got out of that, did you feel that was almost like your comfort zone type thing? Like where you got out of that, and then, how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was more as like, is this the only thing I can do? Like, all I can do is just cover baseball. And like, I wanted to prove to myself, I think there was part of it, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do other things. And, this is like this sports writers love to like, hang their hat on this. They're like, well, if you can cover baseball or if you can cover high school sports, you can do anything. And I do tend, you can cover anything. And I do tend to believe that. I mean, it does give you, the baseball beat. The way I look at it is, I'm writing about baseball, but in the end, like, I'm writing about people. My beat is people. It just so happens the people I'm covering are, multi-million-dollar athletes or billionaire owners or, very famous coaches or managers. It's just, they're people though. I mean, like, they experience the same emotions and the same feelings that we do. They just do it in front of a lot more people than we do. And those basic human emotions are like really, to me, what drives, everything. And baseball is included in that. And so I view my job as covering people and trying to, humanize these games. And that doesn't mean just like writing a human interest feature. It means like trying to actually figure out like the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings that go into, big games or a player's rise or a player's fall. And, I think getting out of that comfort zone that I did for a year, like seeing, knocking on a door, in Southwest Philadelphia of a family who had just lost a child in a homicide. I mean, like a terrible experience, an experience that like, I didn't really enjoy. And like, I didn't think I'd ever be doing that or covering a murder trial, in Center City, Philadelphia for 3 weeks. And then learning the intricacies of the court and, the people involved, but it just always came back to people, and it could be a judge, it can be a first baseman, it could be, anyone, but the same basic ideas apply. And like being empathetic, being a good listener, having an open mind, like these are all things that you need on the baseball beat, and you can transfer them anywhere just about. And I think proving to myself that I could do that, was satisfying. But like I did kind of miss having a ballpark as my office. Like it's hard to beat that as your office. I mean, it's not a bad view. So I'm happy that I have it.
And not only that too, but you bring up the fact that the ballpark is your office, and then also different cities is your office daily as well. And whenever you go on the road, with obviously covering the Phillies and for the Athletic, you are blessed to be traveling all over the United States. And during everything that's going on right now between COVID and between the unrest in America, it's you almost feel like it's I've heard some people say, it's just a ballpark, it's just another city. But I've always said to myself, well, when I do that, when I go from place to place with our school, St. Francis College in Brooklyn, it's almost like you can't take it for granted, because it's again, it's another city, and one day you could be completely again out of a job. Now going back to what we were talking about earlier, with, you were actually discussing about the losing seasons, or, right when you actually got into, your time with the Phillies. If I'm not mistaken, that was around 2010, if you will. So that was 2010.
Yeah, that was my first full year. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And not only that, I don't mean to cut you off. Again, I'm just having a little difficulty hearing you. So 2010, if I'm not mistaken, that was the year that Doc Roy Halladay had his no-hitter against the Cincinnati Reds in the NLDS. And for all those baseball fans that know out there, that's only the second postseason no-hitter ever. And I'm going to venture to say that my man Matt Gelb right here got to witness that. So with you being able to witness history that we may never see again, you obviously got the start with the Phillies right when their prime was going a little downhill, but you got spoiled there, Matt. You got to see an NLCS trip right away. Unfortunately, they couldn't get past the San Francisco Giants, but then the following year, they still made it to the NLDS. So talk about if, as a writer, do you feel that in the beginning of your tenure, you were a little spoiled there where you got to see a lot of winning, but then unfortunately, ever since 2011-12, it has been a humongous rebuilding process post Charlie Manuel era?
Yeah, a great baseball writer by the name of Chico Harlan. He no longer writes about baseball. He's actually the Washington Post Italian correspondent. He's based in Rome, and he's been writing some incredible stories, during the COVID crisis. And he's actually a Syracuse alum. He's a few years older than me. He covered the Washington Nationals when they were really bad, really, really bad. And his advice was always, you want to be covering either a really, really good team or a really, really bad team, because both of those are entertaining. What you don't want is like a team that's kind of just like stuck in the mud, like kind of just grinding its gears, like 81-81, or like, 77 win team that's just like not good enough to be entertaining and not bad enough to be like dysfunctional. And so when I first started covering the Phillies, I mean, they were a dynamo. I mean, they were incredible. And not only did I get to see Roy Halladay's postseason no-hitter, but, he also threw a perfect game that season at the end of May, which was, 2 months into my first full year covering baseball. And like, I mean, there's only been, I think, 21 or 22 perfect games in baseball history, and there's only been 2 postseason no-hitters in baseball history. So I got to see each one of those in the first year I was covering baseball, and I did feel like I was out of place. Like I was like, how did I step into this? And I think what I remember from those games the most was just kind of like the pressure of getting it right. I mean, like I was writing for the biggest paper in town, and like you're chronicling history. I mean, you are, when people in 4 decades go back and want to read about that game. I mean, they're pull up our newspaper archives. I mean, they're probably going to find my story from that game, and that, I think, it kind of, I know for the perfect game, which was May 29th, 2010 in Miami, it did kind of hit me when I was writing it. I kind of, I think it kind of got in my head, and it was definitely not the right time because it was against deadline, and I was like, oh God, like I have a lot of pressure right now. And but it was so neat to be just like a tiny part of that. And like, I didn't have any role in it, but I was there. I got to see it, and I got to see both games. And there's not a lot of people who were there in attendance for both games. I mean, other than the players and the coaches, there's not a lot of people who saw both games in person that season. And I think it's kind of cool that I was one of those people.
Yeah, especially, well, first off, and I think, again, you can attest to this too. In Miami, there's, especially in May, there's not many people down there anyway, let alone fans and probably the writers too. They want to be in full air condition. But again, no, all joking aside though, to be able to witness history twice, first off, to be able to witness history one time is really something remarkable. But then again, you get it a second time in the postseason. It's really remarkable for you to be able to do that. Now, just rewinding a little bit, and I'm sure, obviously, with you being a diehard sports fan or even a sports journalist, and you've been writing for baseball, not so much basketball, or not ever basketball, but I like to always do this on our show with our guests. We like to go from like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. We go from here all the way back and then back forward. So right before your time with the Philadelphia Inquirer, you were with the Star Ledger in Newark, New Jersey. And that was immediately after your college, your college tenure. So when you were in Newark, not too far from here, You were there for only a couple of months. Talk about your time there and how things got started, and then eventually you proceeded to head back to your home state in Pennsylvania. So talk about your time there, or the bridge from New Jersey back to PA.
Yeah, so when I graduated in May 2009, and my whole senior year, I was really, struggling to find a job. I mean, I was looking for jobs, internships, even though I was graduating. I was kind of open to anything, and it was a little after the recession. I mean, it was not a good time, not as bad as it is now, but it wasn't good. And I had a couple different things I was kind of pulling on. I almost went and covered the Rays for MLB.com as an intern the summer after I graduated, but I at the last, maybe like 2 months before I graduated, the Star Ledger came with an offer that was basically like an extended internship. It was a little more than a summer internship with the potential for it to be a little more than an internship. I mean, they thought that maybe they would be able to bring me on full time at some point. So I was like, all right, yeah, this sounds great. I mean, let's do it. And for most of that summer, you'll laugh. I mean, I did a lot of baseball. I was essentially the backup Yankees writer that summer, and the Yankees beat writer that summer for the New York Star Ledger was Mark Craig, who is now my teammate at The Athletic, and we just wrote a story together this week. I was his backup basically, which means like I would be at the ballpark. I might write a side story while he's writing the main story, or I might fill in for him if he's not covering. But I did a lot of everything that summer as an intern. You just, you're like, you do whatever they tell you. I mean, if they want you to go cover arena football, or if they want you to cover, a Devils rookie camp or something, you're like, yeah, great. I mean, it sounds awesome. So I got to do a lot that summer, but I did a lot of baseball. And that summer, watching how the daily rhythms of the beat, watching how Carrig did his work, like it did convince me. I was like, I want to do this. At least I want to try it. And my time in New York was great, but they couldn't keep me on. They had some financial problems, and they're like, after 12-ish weeks, I was I was unemployed. I was a college graduate. I was unemployed. I came home. My parents live. I grew up in the area. So my parents are about a half hour outside the city in Philly, and I started covering high school sports as like a stringer, as a freelancer for the Inquirer. And they had known me because I interned for them when I was in college, and that's how I started. I mean, I covered maybe 2 or 3 games a week, a soccer game, a high school football game, and then the paper went into bankruptcy. But just before they went into bankruptcy, they found a way to somehow make me a full-time employee, which I don't know how they did it. They liked me. They knew they were going to have some kind of hiring freeze probably, so they kind of just pushed me in. And I was covering high schools for the Inquirer. And then, I mean, it was right place, right time. I mean, they were in bankruptcy, so they weren't allowed to make any hires, and they lost both of their baseball writers in the off season between the 2009 and the 2010 season. They both left for different outlets, and they weren't allowed to hire. And so they looked at me, and I started covering, baseball, started covering the Phillies full time right before my 23rd birthday. And it was like, I was totally unprepared. I mean, like I knew baseball, and I love baseball, and I but I was totally in over my head. I mean, I should not have had that job. Like, they took a chance on me, and I was, far too young. I thought I knew everything, and because when you're 23, you think you know everything, and now that I'm 33, I realize that I knew nothing, and that's how I got started. I mean, it was luck. I mean, it really was. Like, I almost took a job in Bloomington, Indiana, covering Indiana University football for the Bloomington News Tribune, I think it is, paper there. Almost. I mean, like, I was a finalist, and I didn't get that job, and I was pretty devastated about it. And then I just kept covering high schools as a freelancer for the Inquirer, and it worked out. I don't know. I mean, like, it's weird how it works out.
Yeah, and you know what, Matt, you've said it you've said it a few times so far in our conversation, but really it is the truth, is that right place at the right time, you're going to be noticed. And that's the whole thing in our industry, especially play-by-play broadcasters too, who want to break into the industry where they have to go to Wichita, Kansas, or an Indiana, a city in Indiana, just like as you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago or a couple of seconds ago. Now, for you to be in your hometown or in your home city, if you will, how good does that feel to say to yourself, well, the farthest place you had to go was to school and in Syracuse? And really, by rights, Matt, Syracuse is not that far, as opposed to a Kansas or an Idaho, where people have to get started if they can't cover high school sports. And now you're covering your team, if I'm not mistaken. When you were a kid, and full disclosure here, Matt, I'm assuming when you were a kid, you were rooting for the Phillies.
I actually wasn't, believe it or not. I was raised as a Mets fan. My dad grew up a Mets fan, and I spent my nights as a kid listening to the fan 6:60 a.m. because we would get it at nighttime in the Philadelphia suburbs, and I listened to the Mets. I think this was before. Like, I feel like I'm not that old. I'm only 33, but this is, you couldn't watch, out of town, out of market games unless it was the Braves because they were on TBS. But I would listen to Bob Murphy and Gary Cohen on 660 fan, and I grew up a Mets fan actually, and I was definitely, I felt like a lot of my friends weren't Phillies fans, even though, growing up, because the Phillies were so bad in the mid to late 90s after 93. Just terrible teams. Nobody was interested. Bad ballpark, bad teams. So, I took a lot of crap being a Mets fan in suburban Philadelphia. But, once you start covering baseball, I'm a fan of the game. If the Phillies are good, that's great. If the Phillies are bad, that's okay. I really want an interesting story. I think it's better when they're good because more people, I think, are reading, more people are paying attention. I definitely think it's better when they're good, but I don't mind, covering a really, really bad team or a team that has a lot of drama. I kind of enjoy that. I am a writer, like I am not trying to create drama or create stories, but if it's there, like it's entertaining. So actually, grew up a Mets fan.
Well, well, you know what? So for our New York and Long Island listeners, they'll like that. But for the Philadelphia fans that are listening, you know how years ago they booed Santa Claus. Now they're gonna boo Matt Gelb in the press box. Now next time they see you after hearing that. But no, all joking aside, though, that really is fantastic. I will say I'm a diehard Yankees fan, but still I respect the Phillies. Obviously, again, all the Mets fans that are listening. Too bad. Suck it up. The Phillies are better, but we'll get to that later on. But and you spoke about the drama. We won't go into that, but you actually have had a whole lot to write about in the last 9 to 10 years with Charlie Manuel leaving, with Gabe Kapler possibly not being able to manage, or Bryce Harper coming in and saying, well, we're going to bring a title to DC. Oh, wait a minute. That actually happened. He by accidentally said DC as opposed to Philly. And then with Hunter Pence was there as well. Andrew McCutchen destroys his ACL last year. And then there's so many stories to talk about in the city of brotherly love. And I'm actually a diehard Eagles fan, so I love the city. But now I have to ask you this, because with you as, or was a writer, you were a writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Now I have to ask you this, because when you started early on in your career at age, what age did you start at the Inquirer once again?
23 when I was full time. Yeah.
Right. So 23, and especially in the media market such as Philadelphia, where obviously how the sports fans are. They take their sports very seriously, whether it be the Sixers, especially the Flyers and the Eagles, but also the Phillies, and even sometimes with even now their soccer team with the Union. Talk about the possible pressure that you felt being a 23-year-old and writing for a major market such as Philadelphia. Even though, again, you know the area, you know the people, but you're still 23 years old, and you said it yourself. You really didn't know much.
Yeah, I think knowing the area and knowing the fans and how they are, it definitely helped me. I think what I loved about, when I first started covering a team is that people like really were hanging on every word. I mean, the Phillies, remember, had won back-to-back NL pennants. They won the World Series in 2008. They lost the Yankees in the World Series in 2009. But there were a lot of expectations when I started full-time on the beat, in spring training 2010. I had actually covered a little bit of the 09 World Series just because I was like an extra guy. Like we had like 10 people covering that World Series. But as the full time beat writer, spring training 2010, I mean, like I was yeah, there's a ton of pressure, but it was so cool because like you knew that everybody was reading. Like you knew that everybody was hanging on every word, and people were excited, and people were following along, and even if it's like a random Tuesday night in June, that like there's more than just diehards that are paying attention. Like there are a lot of people interested, and I love that. I love that. I felt like people were reading and people were interested, and as a writer, I mean, like all you can hope for is that like you can engage your readers. You hope that you're giving them what a fair and accurate portrayal of the team, and that you feel like you're asking the questions that they want to be asked. And I think as a beat writer, that's how I take my job. I mean, I'm trying to be a voice for the fans. I mean, like I have the access. I'm the one who's able to ask the manager a question, or ask the pitcher a question, or ask the general manager a question. Like, it's important that I have a feel for what people are thinking. And it doesn't mean that just because the loudest people in the room want to fire everybody. I mean, it doesn't mean like that I'm saying that they need to fire everybody, or that I'm asking why won't you fire this guy. It's more like I mean, I think you need to know what people are thinking or wondering about, and you want to make sure that you have the pulse of the fans, and you also want to know when to tell them that maybe that they're wrong. So, I mean, I think it's knowing the people in the city, and knowing how the fans think. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but like I try to read and listen as much as I can to people, and want to have a fair representation of what the team is like.
Yeah, it's you obviously have to know the area because again, as we said just a couple of minutes ago, the fans in Philly, if you don't give them what they want, they're again gonna boo Santa Claus. They're gonna boo Matt Gelb. They're gonna boo their own fans, or talk trash to their own fans, like in the 300 in the 200s up in at the link. I know exactly how it is as a fan myself. But now fast forwarding a little bit, Matt, to 2020. You begin your 10th year or /11th year, or 10 and a half year, if you will. We did say earlier or in the top of the hour that baseball is back. Yes, but also let's not forget there was a starting point too this year. We completely forgot, obviously, that there was a start of spring training back in March of 2020. Boy, does it seem like almost a year ago, but really it's only not even 3 full or 4 full months. It's crazy. Earlier, again, we spoke about Matt's time being with his family, but now we have to ask this. It's difficult because, you think to yourself, okay, well, there are things that are bigger than baseball, such as COVID-19. And you got the call, Matt. Were you down in Florida when you got the call that spring training was canceled and this was officially deemed as a pandemic?
I actually had come home for like a week-long break. I was there at the beginning of spring training when pitchers and catchers reported, and I stayed in Clearwater, Florida for about a month, and then came back to Philly around like March 6th or 7th, and I was supposed to go back on the 15th, I think. And that was like right around the time where like things started to get really weird. And I remember, I was watching the NBA on my couch actually at home, and when they ended up canceling the season, or suspending the season, and I mean, I actually still have a suitcase that is at the Phillies complex in Florida. I'm hoping that I might be able to get it back this week because there's another truck that's bringing supplies up from the Phillies complex in Florida and bringing them back to Philadelphia because they're doing, their second spring training. I want to call it summer camp. Can we call it summer camp instead of
That's
like
fair.
second spring training or spring training 2.0? I don't like that. I like summer camp. It's summer camp, and
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
so I left a bunch of stuff down there at my condo because I was going to go back down. And that it doesn't feel like a year ago. It feels like 10 years ago at this
Yeah.
point. And it was just, I mean, it is surreal because and it's small potatoes compared to what people are going through. But everybody's daily rhythms like have been disrupted, right? And like during the baseball season, like end of June here, like I would have a daily rhythm. Like I would, there's just like a pace to it, and just not having that has been, it's a big adjustment. It's definitely something weird, but I feel like I've been trying to talk to players and coaches via text message or calling people in the game that I know, but it's so weird not having been around baseball now for almost 4 months. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild just to think that there was a possibility where there would be no baseball. Again, we just found out yesterday that it was made official that the MLBPA Players Association they agreed to everything that the owners that Major League Baseball that they proposed. Now it's going to be a 60-game season. There is a lot of things. Or a lot of asterisks, if you will. There's no pregame lineup exchanges. There's no there can't be any exchanges with any of the umpires. They have to be 6 feet. There's a possibility that there could be suspensions. There could be ejections for stuff like that. But now, Matt, as you with you being a writer and now to see this, this is almost like Christmas for you. Baseball is back. You're able to now, easier for you as a writer. How difficult was it when baseball, obviously the 2020 season was in limbo or was in serious jeopardy? How tough was it to come up with positive content?
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough to write, period. I mean, I think, I work for a sports company. I mean, The Athletic, we cover sports. I mean, we don't do news or anything else other than that. And there were no sports in the world. I mean, basically, there was Australian rules football or, something for a few weeks, but that's it. I mean,
yeah.
So it was hard. I mean, like they asked us, I mean, I give our company a lot of credit, my editors, they encouraged us to be creative. They wanted us to, make sure that we were trying to cover the developments that were happening with regards to coming back to play and what were players doing to stay in shape, or what happens to minor league players, for example, with what are they getting paid, how are they staying in shape as well, like are there guys that are going to get released, all this kind of stuff. But also be creative though too, and try to come up with fun ideas, maybe that either nostalgic or stories that you always wanted to get to that you never really had time to get to. Well, now, like, all we have is time. We just have plenty of time to do anything. So, I mean, I had a lot of fun just like doing some research. Like, I actually watched just some old Phillies broadcasts on YouTube and just kind of like did a running journal of some of those. And people really liked those. It was just like without baseball, it was something, they kind of feel like they were experiencing baseball a little bit. But it was hard. I mean, it's really hard to come up with ideas because, I mean, it's I would check in with people in the game and they'd be like, so anything new? And it's like, no, not really. Just like doing the same thing I was doing last week. Just kind of, trying to stay in shape, trying to just like wait to hear when we're going to play, if we're going to play. And, given everything that was happening in the world, I mean, it didn't feel like there was a lot of days where I would be like, I don't even feel like I should be writing about baseball. I mean, it just didn't feel right. It just felt so inconsequential. And there are still days when it feels that way. I mean, certainly like, I have my doubts about whether they're going to be able to finish the season. I mean, they have to try, and they're going to try to play, and they will try. But there's a lot of risk, and I think everybody is aware of that. So, there's times where, rightfully so, baseball just hasn't felt that important, and I think we're all, sports fans, sports writers, we've all, I think, probably had those thoughts where like, oh, like we really miss sports, and like there's no question about it. But then there's also been those moments where you're like, oh, like like the time that I spent focusing on sports, I can focus it on other things, or I can, maybe it's a good chance for me to really, pay attention to things that are happening in the world, and support other causes, or read about things that I haven't read about, or try to expand, my knowledge and like my expertise. And so, baseball, it still feels a little weird to me. Like I know that it's like a couple weeks away from possibly happening, but it almost feels like it's still not going to happen. Like I don't know. It's just the fact that there's so many changes, and this is such a unprecedented situation. It doesn't even feel real yet to me that they're going to play. I hope they do, but it still feels kind of odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely odd, and not only that too. I like the point that you brought up about expanding knowledge on everything else, because there are times when I've been told, well, you're so busy focused on sports, but then you sometimes got to watch the news with certain things. You're writing about this, you're calling these games, you're doing whatever, but then, because you're in the books, trying to do research, trying to come up with content, it's almost like, things that are happening, again, we're all human. We all deal with all this stuff. That includes the players that you cover. It is definitely a crazy world out there for sure. But sticking to a few positives here, Matt, as we head into the bottom of the eighth of our interview here. Are we okay still on time, Matt? I know you're
Yeah.
2-year-old. You're okay? All right. I'm just making sure. Yeah, we'll be. Yeah, we'll be good in just a few minutes. But as we said, bottom of the eighth inning here of our conversation. For those that are just joining us, that's Matt Gelb for The Athletic, covers the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough. We're 10 minutes from 9 p.m. Eastern time here on Long Island, and also where Matt is in the suburban Philadelphia area. So now with baseball officially being back, there are plenty of asterisks. And also, obviously, there are also many risks. We just heard also, Matt, on Friday that your team, the Philadelphia Phillies, had 5 players test positive for COVID-19. And also just yesterday, or actually earlier today, was the Rockies' Charlie Blackmon, and also 2 other players. Now, with you having a family, you having a 2-month-old daughter, and for you possibly, well, not possibly, most likely going to have to head down to wherever the Phillies are going to play. We don't know yet. Are they going to play in a, in an isolated Arizona complex? Are they going to play in Florida? Well, obviously not Florida, because now everything is spiking. Or could they be playing in Philadelphia? We don't know. There is literally no answer to be had. But then obviously Major League Baseball shut down all the complexes, and everyone was sent back to their home city. Yankees and the Mets are going to be having summer camp, if you will, here at Yankee Stadium and at Citi Field. So with you being a writer, Matt, and you having a family, and as you said, looking at the bigger picture in the world that is going on, and to expand your knowledge with certain things, such as this issue, what do you think as a writer, and your family, how do you go about heading back to the ballpark?
Great question. I mean, it's starting to just become a reality now, because we finally got some of the guidelines and the media guidelines, and my job will change drastically. I mean, I think the great thing about covering baseball in the past has been the access. I'm very selfish about it, because like it's great. I mean, like I get access to the clubhouse before every game, talk to some players if I'm working on a feature, talk to the manager before the game, and then also after the game, obviously the clubhouse opens. You can talk to players from the game or talk to the manager. I mean, the access is really good, especially being on the road too, when I would travel, and you develop relationships, through that access. And the access is going to be very different in this world. I mean, there will be basically no access, other than like a video call. And so, there's still, I think, there's going to be value in being at the ballpark, and I expect to, certainly cover a lot of their home games here in Philadelphia. but what that looks like, I mean, I don't know. Like I've, tried to take as many precautions, as we can, like as a family. I mean, really limited, everything. I mean, go to the grocery store maybe like once every 2 weeks, and really beyond that, like very little interaction outside of my immediate family. And I think, for a lot of people, this is going to be difficult. I mean, this goes for the players too. I mean, there are players who have young children or players who have pregnant wives right now who have difficult decisions to make, and this is not just about baseball. And like, as much as we want to focus on sports and baseball, I mean, there's this is way bigger than baseball, and I think we're, um, you know, as a writer, I mean, I'm just like the tiniest of pieces in that. So, um, it's my job. So like, I expect to still be going to the ballpark, but I probably won't be traveling. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of value in traveling just because of the lack of access. And the schedule is such that the Phillies aren't going to be doing a lot of long distance traveling. I mean, the longest trip they're going to make is to Miami, and Miami and Atlanta. I mean, those are their longest trips, and they're mostly going to be concentrated here in the Northeast. A lot of NL East and a lot of AL East games, and so I mean, reading through the protocols that they have in place for how the teams are going to travel, I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's like 10 pages of very detailed protocols for how you travel in a plane, on a train, like what you're supposed to do when you're at the hotel, like how you're supposed to have your meals, like not go out, like not see family or friends. And I mean, I don't know how they're going to enforce a lot of this, but it's going to be really hard. I mean, and then like the alternative is this, like, quote unquote bubble idea, like the NBA is going to do, and maybe the bubble works better, but that's a big ask. Like, I mean, you're asking players to not be with their families for a while, or at least the beginning, and you're asking these guys to relocate for months at a time here, and I understand why baseball is not going to do that, but there's a lot of risk in trying to play in every home city, right? I mean, there's certain cities right now, as we're seeing, that are hotspots. So, I mean, there's a lot of ethical and moral dilemmas here, and I feel like we've only begun to scratch that surface, especially on the player front. I really think that some of these guys have. You're going to see some guys who aren't going to play, and it's going to be hard to blame them. And I know there's going to be people who will be upset about that. A lot of fans, but this is bigger than baseball right now. It really is.
Yeah, it's extremely bigger, and you also brought up about with the other sports and the bubbles and everything like that, and we even talk about now. There's other players, the aforementioned Charlie Blackmon, but then you also look to the NBA. You look at Indiana Pacers. Malcolm Brogdon was just diagnosed with that today. Also, Jabari Parker from the Sacramento Kings, another hotspot in Sacramento now, was just tested positive. So a lot of these bubbles, first these guys have to, try and escape COVID, but clearly some of these guys are starting to fall like flies. And especially also Ezekiel Elliott from Dallas as well. He was also tested positive as well. So first these guys have to get to these facilities, and they have to make sure that they're safe before they even get to start playing. So again, so many question marks still, and it's really weird, just to think about a lot of everything that's going on. But Matt, in our final 5 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the Phillies themselves and your thoughts on this. Universal designated hitter. Can't believe we're saying this. The designated hitter will now be in effect for 2020 and 21 seasons in the National League. How do the Phillies benefit from this?
I mean, they have a former Met, actually, Jay Bruce, who's probably going to be, getting a lot of the at-bats as the DH. And as a purist, I love National League Baseball. And Joey, I'm assuming you're favorable to the AL style game. But I always thought that it would be like the apocalypse whenever the DH came to the NL. And it was going to happen eventually. And now I guess, like, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not, like, I can't get that fired up about it, but I have heard different ideas, and Jason Stark, one of my mentors and one of my colleagues now, he's kind of been pushing this idea where, the DH in the National League, or maybe in both leagues, is tied to like starting pitchers, right? So you have a DH so long as your starting pitcher stays in the game. And this is not something they're going to do this year, obviously, but in the future. And then once you remove your starting pitchers, you lose the DH. So really, it kind of incentivizes teams to try to, go back to the ways of where starter pitchers pitch deeper into games. I actually really like that because it adds strategy. And the reason why I prefer the National League games is because there is added strategy. Granted, it's pretty tough to watch a lot of these pitchers hit, and like I get it. I get why they want a DH. So I'm fine with it. I think Jay Bruce will get a lot of at bats for the Phillies as a DH. It's possible they use Alex Bohm, who's one of their top hitting prospects. He might come up at some point during the season and get some at bats as a DH too. But I mean, I think it's weird because like DH in recent years, especially the Yankees do it this way too. I mean, there's not one guy who's a DH anymore. I mean, it's a lot of AL teams have been using it sort of as a way to rest, quote unquote, rest their regular. They just rotate it. So the starting shortstop or starting second baseman gets a day as a DH, once a week, and it's just a way to get them off their feet a little bit. So there's not a lot of teams that have like primary DHs, and I think there's maybe like 5, 6 AL teams last year that had primary DHs. So I assume that a lot of NL teams will not have a set guy, but in the Phillies case, Bruce, might be the guy who gets a lot of those at bats.
Yeah, absolutely. And ever since Boston Red Sox designated hitter David Ortiz retired, really, we have not seen, a primary DH. We saw, obviously, Ed Wing, if you will, Edwin Encarnacion. He was the primary for Cleveland for a little bit. Before that, obviously, in Toronto. And we really haven't seen much since. So a lot of change coming to Major League Baseball here in this brand new decade. Obviously, with a 60-game season, it's definitely going to be weird. So let's finish up here, Matt. And for the first 23 episodes, we've asked all of our guests this question. Is now officially underway. Summer was made official just a few days ago, June 21st, summer solstice. We asked everybody what their favorite ice cream flavor was. Why would we do that on a sports show? Well, because there are a lot of negative things going on in the world, and we needed something positive to look forward to. So, Matt Gelb, I shall ask you this question. What is your favorite ice cream? And we can add this to the list.
Give me cookie dough.
Cookie dough. Excellent. All right. So you actually are in line with former NFL wide receiver Cecil Shorts. That's pretty cool. Right. So there you go. So Cecil Shorts and Matt Gelb both have the same taste in ice cream. Like that. That's pretty good. We'll definitely let him know that. Now to the final question that I have for you here is that with you still traveling, or when you were traveling, back in the, oh my gosh, a year ago, your favorite National League city and your favorite interleague city, your favorite American League city. Let's hear both. One of both.
Favorite National League city is probably San Diego. It's hard to beat. Just the weather. I love the ballpark too. It's right downtown. It's a really cool place. Very different than Philly. I mean, very laid back and beautiful weather. So it's a nice escape. And then favorite AL city? I'll probably stay on the West Coast and I would go Seattle. And the Phillies don't go there often. In fact, we were supposed to be in Seattle for July 4th weekend this year, and that sadly will not happen. But I really do like whenever I can get a trip to Seattle. And the Phillies have been out there, I think, twice since I've been covering them. Beautiful, beautiful city.
Well, that's definitely, again, another place on the bucket list that I'll eventually have to get to at some point. But obviously, Matt, we've run out of time here. I want to thank you so much for for coming on to the show. Obviously, so many more questions. Be sure to follow Matt Gelb on Twitter at Matt Gelb. Am I right? That's it. As easy as 1, 2, 3 at Matt Gelb. That's it. Blue check mark, works for The Athletic, the Philadelphia Phillies beat writer. Really can't thank you enough for joining me here, Matt. And it's been a lot of fun the last hour. It's just to get away from the negative and to look ahead to the 60-game season.
Thank you for having me, Joey. Really appreciate it. And be safe.
Absolutely, man. So before you do go, just want to read a couple of closing credits for our audience. So for those here watching on the Blackjack Media Network, join our friends Kurt, Kenny, Jim, and Petro on Saturday night, June 27th, starting at 8 p.m. as they talk all things sports over at the K&K Show, airing Wednesday nights and Saturday evenings. They're actually live right now. You could head over there to the I-95 Sports Entertainment Network at the K&K Sports Show on Facebook, or visit the i95sportsnetwork.com for more details. Also, episode number 25 of this podcast, the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series, we will be featuring someone I'm assuming that Matt Gelb has run into a few times. MLB.com, New York Mets beat writer Anthony DiComo will be joining us here on the show Monday, June 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, next Tuesday, episode number 9 of the Essential Wrestling Podcast returns June 30th, Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Ladies and gentlemen, for one last time, that is Matt Gelb. I'm Joey Jarzynka, and for all of us at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks, we'll see you next time. Hold on. There we go. Good stuff, Matt. Really appreciate your time.